My name is Chloe and I'm here with my colleague Ruth. And together we work at Children and Families Across Borders on the Post-Placement Support Project. Today's session is entitled Lunch and Learn. It's a 45-minute slot where we'll be looking at good practice when supporting refugee families in the UK. If there is time at the end, we will, there may be time for questions, there may not be. We'll see how we get on with things. So really, it's just to say welcome to this session today, and we hope you enjoy it and learn something from it as well. Can everybody see the slides as well that are moving? Yeah, have we all got contact us? Fantastic, that's great. Okay.
Can I just ask that AI notes are turned off? I think in the information you've received, we've asked that AI notes are not recorded.
Yeah, have those been turned off? Is there a way of verifying that the AI notes have been turned off? That's something that I don't know. I don't know if yeah.
I'll see if
Okay. So just to respond to the question that yes, the slides will be made available. Ruth, are you trying to see if the AI notes have been?
I'm just having a look into that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll follow that up. You can carry on.
I'll carry on. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. What I'll do is I'll do a quick recap. So we have a 45-minute session this afternoon to talk about good practice when supporting refugee families in the United Kingdom. Myself and my colleague Ruth work on the post-placement support project at Children and Families Across Borders, also known as CFAB. Right, this was our first slide. Okay, now we're going to get into the swing of things, hopefully. So welcome everybody to this session today. Here are our contact details, including our free advice line, our inquiries, email address, and also our website. The slides will be made available to you at the end of the session today. It may only happen tomorrow or the day after, but you will receive them. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about CFAB, Children and Families Across Borders. So we run an advice line 5 days per week to provide guidance and practical support on cross-border children and family cases. We work around welfare checks and home visits, and also making assessments, as well as both kind of pre-placement preparation and post-placement support as well. We carry out life story work as well with the families, some of the families that we work with. We also have our family reunification project in the UK, also known as the post-placement support project, which is where Ruth and I work with families who are recently united in the UK. Most of those people have now will have entered the UK under family reunion rules. And we will talk a little bit about kind of the legal implications of what is going on with family reunion later on. And so today we're going to be concentrating on looking at how best to work with families who are being united in the UK, which is the title of our session, which is Good Practice when Supporting Refugee Families in the UK. Ruth, do you want to say a little bit about yourself, and then I'll quickly say something about myself as well?
Yep. So my name's Ruth. I'm a registered social worker. I've been working as a social worker since 2000. Working in leaving care and looked after children, and then had a period living in the Middle East for 12 years, and I've come back to be working with refugees again in the UK in the last 4 years. I'm also an Arabic speaker, and yeah, cross-culturally married as well yeah.
Thank you, Ruth. So my name's Chloe. I'm not a qualified social worker. My background is in immigration advice, and I have worked in the field of migration and asylum and immigration for over the last 20 years in various NGOs and in various roles. And like Ruth, I speak another useful language as well for the families that we work with. I speak Farsi, having studied Persian literature and having been in Iran many moons ago, I was going to say, many years ago. Yes, so both Ruth and I, we bring that expertise and those skills that we have in working with the families that we are working with. So a little bit about CFAB's Family Reunification Service, also known as Post-Placement Support Project, PPSP for short. There we go. So we provide post-placement support for children and young people who've recently arrived in the United Kingdom to live with extended family members. We also now are registered with the Immigration Advice Authority, so we can provide limited legal services at level 1 under asylum and protection and at level 2. So we are not qualified, though we are getting trained and hope to pass exams in the field of immigration. But at the moment, our legal work is limited to anything that comes under the asylum and protection routes. So that would be things like lodging appeals, applying for travel documents, making family reunion applications, making leave-in line applications, all those kind of things. And we are looking to expand on that. The aims of our project, of the post-placement support project, there are kind of 3 broad aims. One of them is concentrating on health and well-being. So health, of course, being things, kind of like your body and your physical and mental health, but also looking at the family's well-being. So the young people and the children's well-being as well. So ensuring that they are, it's not enough just to be registered with a GP. It's also about finding out how they're doing, how they are feeling, and how they're adjusting to life in the UK. Another important, also one thing I need to say under health and well-being is housing is very important as well. And we work a lot to ensure that our families are housed as best as possible within the housing legislation. Access to education obviously is very important for our young people and children, but also for adults as well, to ensure as much as possible within the funding restrictions that there are, that they are able to access college places in order to start learning or improving their English if they already know some English. And ensuring that children are in school. Lots of the families that we work with, their children may have not been in school for a long time, either because of their journeys or because they were living in precarious situations whilst waiting to come to the UK. So, for example, Afghan children in Pakistan may find it very difficult to access kind of mainstream education there. So many children will not have been to school for a while. And accessing education it can be quite difficult and tricky sometimes. So you can imagine that if you have the added obstacle of not having been to school for a long time, not knowing how the system works, not knowing how admissions work, this is key. Education is key. And then the other aim of the project is supporting families to stay together, but as long as there are no safeguarding or protection concerns. Yes, this is quite an important one, but it doesn't mean that we will keep, that we will support families if we believe that there is a need, or if younger people within the family are saying that they feel that they need to move out, or maybe even to be taken into the care of the local authority. So those are the 3 project aims. To be eligible to come under the post-placement support project, we work with minor children, obviously unaccompanied minors, recent migrants to the UK, and separated children. We give priority to children under the age of 18, although we will work with young people up to the age of 21, and I think even in some circumstances up to the age of 25. Is that right, Ruth?
Yeah, if they're subject to or would be subject to an education healthcare plan.
Yeah. And so they have to have that kind of fit that age criteria, and also be in need of help to access physical and psychological health services, education, housing, or benefits. Some families arrive and they know what they're doing. Their language skills are sufficient in order for them to be able to access services, or they have someone who is able to help them already. Maybe someone from the community or someone from their family. Did I miss out? Oh yes, referrals to PPSB. Yeah, they go through our good old email address there at the bottom, refugees.families@cfab.org.uk. We welcome self-referrals from families themselves, and word does get out within the communities. So, for example, for Ruth, with her Arabic skills, she will get a lot of self-referrals from Arabic-speaking families, which is really a testament to her work and how good it is, and also the need that there is within the community. And also we take referrals from other organisations, professionals, legal centres, other NGOs, all kinds of other organisations as well. We work pan UK. Having said that, we haven't been to Belfast yet, I don't think, have we, Ruth? No. But we will go up to Newcastle, and we've been to Wales, and we know that that in some areas, particularly outside of London, there is a real need for post-placement support project, for guidance, for advice. So we do work all around the UK. Again, our legal services, actually, I mentioned this earlier on, but just to say again that these are the kind of applications that we will be able to assist with. Although I should actually say that naturalisation applications are something that we can't work on at the moment. Once we are registered with the Immigration Advice Authority under the immigration branch, we should be able to do those. I would just say one thing about family reunion applications. As probably many of you know, there was they became suspended on the 4th of September 2025, and we are awaiting new rules from the Home Secretary on what new family reunion style will look like. We anticipate that the criteria for meeting these, particularly in terms of accommodation and being able to provide financial support for one's family, will be more stringent from the noises that the Home Office is making at the moment. So we think that but watch this space, and we do hope to be able to continue working under making family reunion applications for families who are eligible once the new rules come out, which would be in we believe hopefully March, April or May. I am now going to pass over to Ruth to talk about challenges faced by refugee families.
Thanks, Chloe. It's great to have many of you with us this lunchtime. So thank you for taking the time for this topic, because I think it's really important. And most of us will be coming across families and young people that have newly arrived in the UK that need support. And this is a particularly vulnerable group because of the traumas that people have suffered overseas on their journey, prior to coming in their home country, maybe in a third country, maybe on their journey to the UK, and also continue to suffer trauma when they arrive in the UK as well as they settle. So I just want to talk us through some of the challenges that these families face. What are the biggest hurdles? when they arrive. And the first thing to say is that really, we've touched on this a little bit, is the hostile environment. Now, this has been, what I mean by this is the government policies around immigration. It was I think a phrase first coined really in relation to when the plan was to send asylum seekers to Uganda, to Rwanda to assess claims. And I think it's still very much or has even more so, the context of in which families are arriving to the UK now, and young people. So this really the idea that in accessing any service in the UK, refugees and, in fact, migrants to the UK experience a difficult environment, difficulty to access services. For example, if any service you're first likely to access, for example, housing or benefits, or even accessing the GP or health services, will be, well, what's your immigration status first? So that is the context in which we're operating. Your worth as a human being is based on your nationality and where you have right to live, and your needs. How you access meeting your needs is through that lens. So that is the context which people are new vulnerable families are arriving in and experiencing every day as part of their arrival to the UK, and that is getting more difficult. There's many changes that the government is proposing to the immigration rules. For example, they're proposing that it will take 20 years for refugees to get settlement. Is one example. For normal family members to join, or I think it's skilled workers to join family. They're looking at earned settlement routes. So there's many, the thresholds are getting higher and higher, and that's impacting on people's mental health, on their sense of security and stability, and will have financial implications on families, will have implications on issues like family reunion, and in terms of long-term settlements in the UK. So that, I think that's important to acknowledge that, first of all, that this is the context in which families are coming to the UK. The second challenge that is facing families is just the lack of resources, the challenge for resources, and the UK social welfare context. We particularly see this in terms of accessing housing resources. We know that councils are overstretched in terms of homeless applications continuing to rise, and local authorities are struggling to provide housing for homeless families. So one of the so often people will approach how this kind of impacts on families are often a family, maybe a family member is a single, a husband has arrived as an asylum seeker, receives refugee status. He's maybe living in a shared house with other people, and then he does a family reunion application. His family arrive to the UK, and the family come and join him. He does an application as homeless to the local authority, and the local authority tell them, you can stay in where you're living. I visited a family 2 weeks ago. The family arrived 4 months ago with mother and 2 children, and they've been living in one room in a house of multiple occupancy with 6 other people, and they're living in 1 bedroom. They made a homelessness application to the local authority, and the local authority is saying, you need to look for housing for yourselves. They have no language skills. They're struggling with the digital literacy skills. Yeah, it's very difficult for this family to access or look for private rented housing themselves. So there's just been delays and gatekeeping by the local authority. The duty of the local authority is as a homeless family, that they should be providing emergency accommodation to this family. And we've had to actually refer for legal support so that the family can access their rights. So that's just an example of the lack of resources, and how that impacts families. And that is in as families apply for school places, as families try to access, we know the NHS is overstretched, access health services, long waiting lists. Yes, in many aspects of the services that families are trying to access, there's this struggle. Another impact for families is the families are coming with the are often arriving traumatized. They're carrying that impact of trauma with them. They may have experienced trauma, as I said, in their home country, and then they may have experienced trauma in a third country they may have lived in as a refugee, and then possibly on a journey to the UK, and then again re-traumatized when they arrive to the UK, living in a hostile environment, not able to access services because of the barriers involved. So there's just this, they've experienced trauma, but also they're continuing to be re-traumatized. They'll also may have been dealing with displacement from one country to another prior to their arrival to the UK. And this will impact on the children's education, children's access to healthcare, a stable home life. Yes, so there's just have been these issues been reiterated time and time again. For people who are stateless, they will have lived as stateless in their birth countries, and then maybe and not been able to access services even in their country of birth. And often it's families from lower social economic status that are more vulnerable as well. In addition, maybe on their journeys, they'll have experienced abuse and violence at the hands of the traffickers as well. So just multiple traumas that these families will have experienced, which really impacts on their ability to cope with all the challenges when and ahead of them when they arrive to the UK. And I think often we know well about the trauma response, the flight, freeze, or fight response. And I think often we see this reactivated or activated when we're working with families as they respond to difficult situations as they settle in the UK. So this it's important for us as trauma-informed practitioners to recognise this, to offer psychological first aid to our families, to take time to listen to their stories, and to identify where the blocks are when we're helping families who have suffered a lot of trauma to access services. Another challenge that families have faced is separation over a long period of time. And this is separation that's enforced separation. It's not separation from their choice. And there'll just be a lot of separation and loss as a result of separation. There may be they may have lost members of their family in their country of origin, which is why they're needing to travel. And we think particularly of unaccompanied minors and others who have suffered from war or violence in their home countries and may have experienced bereavements and missing relatives. But also then there's a separation of maybe there's a family member who's travelled to the UK and been a long time on a journey to reach the UK. And maybe there's other members living in their home country or in a third country waiting for news often over a long time, of what's happened to that family, and then them arriving, going through the asylum process, and then waiting for help for the family reunion applications as well. This can be a very long period. I have met a number of families where the children's, have not known that, never known their father. They maybe have known him on a WhatsApp call, but never remember their remember their father when the father has left when the children are young. So when the family reunites, they're having to get to know each other again, and re-establish roles, re-establish how they function as a family. The children getting to know a parent that they've been separated from for many years.
We so have one more person to think. Don't know them.
Another.
I can find it out.
Sorry, could you turn your mics off, please?
I'm trying my best to get the full.
I'm sure you.
Oh.
I've got a meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Another issue families face is racism and unconscious bias. So the hostile environment policies that we're working and the context we're working within means that racism is just built into our structures. And I think it's important to acknowledge that most refugees and asylum seekers face racism as part of their daily experience here in the UK. I've had many refugees tell me they experience comments such as, "Why did you bring your family here if you can't provide for them?" When they register at the job centre, and when they're asked time and time again to provide documents over and over again. And then racism from neighbours in the street and harassment. I've heard many reports of that from people. For another lady I have worked with, she wears the niqab, and she was explaining to me that she said everybody looks at me in the street, and the fear that instills in her, that she finds it very frightening and doesn't want to leave the house. So just this is part of people's everyday experiences of being here in the UK. Another issue families face is the bureaucracy in the UK. Most families will come from, we know that families have barriers of language and literacy. Some refugees who arrive have good English, but many of the families that we work with that I think need additional support will have limited language skills and also literacy as well. They may not be able to write in their own language. They may come from an oral culture where everything is done by asking somebody else to help you. Somebody may have a connection to help you. And that's a very different way of organising society from the UK, where everything's done through a form, or through filling in a form, providing a document, sending an email. That's a very different way of doing any process. So just that whole bureaucracy is a barrier. If you've never functioned in that before. I think even as professionals, it's a barrier. I find it's a barrier every single day. I was been trying recently on a number of occasions to get utilities set up in a home. And I know Chloe spent a whole day on the issue recently. I have spent many hours as well myself trying to help a family set up a gas bill or register with the electric company. Yeah, and I am a professional. I do this every day, and I'm really experiencing barriers. So, and the levels of bureaucracy involved, if I'm experiencing that, then others certainly will be. I think the levels we need to realise with families, I have visited families where I'm going to help them set up their universal credit application. They don't even have an email address. I have to set them up an email account so that we can start making a claim. Something that we maybe take for granted, but I think we need to, have an understanding of how literate, kind of the digital literacy that there is, that we don't realize, we take for granted. Yeah. Another challenge is debt. Many families are struggling financially. Most families are going to be claiming public funds, universal credit. Accessing public funds can be really challenging, particularly for the first few months when families arrive. According to the Job Centre, it takes 5 weeks to set up a universal credit claim. However, my experience is it actually can take up to 3 months, particularly when the family don't. I think this has become more challenging since we've moved over to e-visas and people do not have physical ID. So we have a period where we've got 3 months. I'm looking at the mark. Yeah, exactly. We've got a period of 3 months potentially when the family arrive and they've got no access to money, nothing to live on. And we cannot underestimate how stressful that is for a family and for those working with a family actually as well. How does this family live? Even if the application goes through straightforwardly with the Job Centre and the worker arrives on the day to help them, the day they've arrived in the country to set up the universal credit claim, it will still take about 5 weeks. So when there's often issues, particularly with the verification of children, and the Job Centre is not accepting the verification documents and requesting additional documents, or when the household is not a traditional household of parents and children, maybe the household constitutes a brother caring for his siblings, or they're caring for a nephew, where the household constitution is different, that process is going to take much longer. So that family is going to be without access to public funds until they can establish that universal credit claim. Often also, in addition, the financial stresses are often families are arriving and they're in debt, and I think they'll have paid people to get them to the UK somehow or other. They'll either have paid a solicitor to do the family reunion application or paid someone to do the application for them potentially if they've not had a charity help them with it. Or they may have, if they've come illegally, they probably will have paid, they'll have paid smugglers to get them to the UK. Or family members will have put up front that money. So they will be they'll be under a lot of pressure to be repaying these debts. So there's a lot of unseen debt that we don't take into account. And I think it's a huge source of stress and anxiety for the families. In addition, with the financial situation for families, we've also got the situation where their families don't understand how will have no sense of a budget of how much to pay for the gas and electric and water, that you need to pay council tax, and how and what kind of lifestyle they'll be able to live in the UK. Is also a real stressor for families. There's also an expectation maybe from family members back home who are in difficult situations to send money back home. And they'll also be under that pressure. Maybe other family members have sacrificed to send a family member to the UK for a better life so they can support them. And many refugees are carrying these unspoken burdens, which they may not be telling us about, which is causing further stress as well. Another challenge I think we face is this is a concept from the Arabic culture, actually. I just wanted to introduce to you, called wasta, which means influence. And this is really about I think this is a really good example of how worldview impacts how we deal with situations. And so, for example, in the Middle East culture, wasta means influence. And the idea is that if I have influence, then you will be able to access services for me. So you'll be able to open the doors for me to access healthcare or get my children into a particular school or do a particular apply for my driver's license. Because you're the person of influence, you'll be able to open those doors for me to get what I need. And this is just normal. This is just part of everyday life. Any situation will be dealt with through this, because people are living in corrupt societies. Often refugees are coming from societies where there's a lot of corruption and dysfunction. So the only way you can get anything done is by using influence, finding somebody who can help you do that. The idea that you can do that yourself and just be able to do it is not, yeah, that's not always the case. So often how that interacts with families working in the UK is they'll have a real distrust of services. They won't believe that anybody will believe them. And just that confidence to do something and that somebody will deal with your piece of paper because you presented that piece of paper is quite a difficult is a difficult idea, actually. If you come from a culture where somebody does something for you and that makes it happen. So families often will need that additional support to access services, to help them grow in confidence to access services on their own. They've got all these barriers, so there's some training and coaching needed to help people understand the system and grow in confidence, but also training them in life skills so that they can start to access for themselves. The other thing with WASTA is it can mean that you also can work quite when I understand the culture, I can use this quite positively to affect change in the family. So, for example, the family may think I've got influence, so I can use that influence to help the case. But in the same time, I can see things maybe in terms of the family functioning that's maybe can give some advice. And I can also use my influence and the relationship I have to actually help the family move forwards as well when they've got stuck. I think changes to immigration rules, I think we've talked about that. Let's go move on. Yeah. Just conscious of time. I think you're on mute, Chloe.
Great. Thank you. I think we are running out of time, so we're going to leave the case study, but that will be sent to you in the slides, and we'll look now at building trust with families. Yeah. So some takeaway points on how to build trust with families. After all the things that Ruth has spoken about, these are actually really crucial to maintaining a relationship with our families that is going to work and which will ensure that optimum results are achieved for all members. So these are kind of the things that Ruth and I think about, and I think carry really at the forefront of our minds when we work with families, is that every family is unique. And just because one family, let's say from Eritrea, practices a tradition in one way, it doesn't mean that all families from Eritrea are going to practice that certain tradition in that way. They may not even practice that tradition. So it's really important not to think that refugee families are kind of like this monolithic block of families that have, everybody, each person's family is unique, is dynamic, each person's culture is dynamic and living. They are living entities. And I think that's really, really important that we don't think, okay, right, we're going to go and see a Pakistani family, we're going to go and do Pakistani culture today. Do you see what I'm saying? It's really important that we're not bringing our kind of, colonial mindset to these things. Again, showing respectful curiosity. So asking questions in a respectful way, showing that you're interested in the family, having an understanding of the family's history and culture. So when you have a referral or you're referring a family on to us, for example, we will ask you for details. We'll ask you, you know, has there been a history of mistreatment and torture at the hands of authorities or on the route to the UK? Are there any medical conditions? How have those medical conditions, whether mental or physical, how have they been managed in the country of origin? It's also about, as Ruth says, about reassuring the family. So if you have a good understanding of the family, if you know where they're coming from, and I don't mean, you know, which country they're coming from, if you know where they're coming from in their headspace, you know, emotionally as well, how is the system, you know, who do they trust? Will they trust us? So it's about reassuring them as well. And then what we do as well is that when we work with other agencies, we will explain the fears and the mistrusts to other agencies. So if we've picked up, for example, a family, maybe their children have never been to school, they are scared for their children to go to school. So we will explain this to the school and explain why they may be absenteeism, sorry, I can't pronounce that word today, or, you know, why there may be difficulties, why the children may be tired during school, for example, if they're fasting during the month of Ramadan or something. And then also when we're visiting families, because we do most of our work is home visit, we dress appropriately, we follow the customs, and we accept hospitality. Because we know that sharing tea with a family, breaking bread, this is what solidifies the trust, really, and building that trust and building the rapports. Ruth, did you want to add anything onto kind of around building trust?
No, that's great.
No? Okay. And then looking at cultural sensitivity, really being culturally sensitive is really the foundation for building trust. Again, going back to that idea of respectful curiosity, being sensitive, being aware of another person's culture. For example, you may just think, okay, I'm not going to go and see a family during the month of Ramadan because I know that they're going to be sleeping. They may be sleeping again. They may be fasting. Maybe they're not fasting. But it's just thinking, you know, is this the best time? Am I going to achieve what we want to achieve? You know, the family and I, what we want to achieve together. Is this the best time to have this appointment? It may not be, and it may also be that you can't, you know, book another time. But it's always to be mindful of these things. Cultural sensitivity also, you're validating religious and cultural practices again. It's seeking to inform, and you're not engaging in cultural relativism. And I think that's very important. So there's a baseline where we say, you know, that everybody is able to, everybody should have same standards of human rights. And I'm just going to give you a very quick example before we finish on that. Is that once upon a time I was running workshops on forced marriage in a school, and the teacher came to me and he said, yeah, this is really interesting what you're saying about forced marriage, because a few years ago I was working with a young girl whose parents had come from Pakistan, and she came to me, she said, sir, you know, I don't want to go back to Pakistan this summer because I think they might, you know, they would like me to marry one of my relatives and I don't want to. And he said he didn't know what to do. He said, oh, well, I just said, well, that's your culture and there's nothing that I can do about it. And that girl never returned to school. So it's, you know, being cultural sensitive is very important, but not being culturally relative and thinking, okay, this is what this group of people do, so we leave them to it. If there is harm, then, you know, we are here to engage in that. I mean, not to engage in the harm, but to engage in that process so that our young people, our children, and our vulnerable people, adults, are safeguarded and protected. I think we have 1 minute left. So I'll just quickly look at available resources. Again, there is a post-placement support project that we run here at CFAB, the Right to Remain Toolkit. We also have our cultural library, which is not written on there, which we should add actually to that slide, where we have guides for Nigeria, Pakistan, Poland, and another country, which I have now forgotten. Romania, yeah, which are very good if you're working with families from those countries. Again, they're not exhaustive, but they are very good. And also, if you're working with families who have no recourse to public funds, you can be looking at Project 17 as well, who have a very good toolkit there. In order to make referrals to our family reunification service, please do email us on this email, and we will look at your referral. Again, our contact details are here again, and there is a QR code, which would be really good if you could do what you have to do with the QR code. I'm not sure what you have to do with it, but I think you open your phone and you take a photograph of it, and then do the Lunch and Learn survey, which means that we can learn from this, we can learn from your feedback, and we can improve these sessions from your feedback as well. So we've made it just in time. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Ruth and I, we're really approachable. We really enjoy engaging with people, and so do come back to us if you have any questions, or you'd like any more information, or you'd like to make any referrals, or you have any feedback on how we can improve these sessions.